a Sword Art Online game taking place in the Steel and Bullet world of Gun Gale Online, where you play as your own original character with brand new friends and go through your own story in a game developed by Dimps as a spiritual successor to the highly praised Freedom Wars game that is advertised as your decisions having a significant effect on the world. Sounds like it doesn't get any better than this, right? Until you realize that the mass marketing of the game falls apart and we are left with a game that fails to deliver on its promises despite actually being a pretty solid game. Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, it's me GamerTurk and this is my ultimate review for Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet. Alright, so many people have been asking Bandai Namco to create a Sword Art Online game where they can play as their very own character, and while I do not share this sentiment, Bandai Namco still delivered. In Fatal Bullet you play as your own character and embark on a journey featuring an original story with the request of your childhood friend Kureha, and come across new people such as Zeliska, Itsuki and your AI companion Alpha Sis. While Kirito and others also exist in the game, they are mostly exposition material and are not really integral to the story, aside from Kirito and Shinon in the additional Kirito mode storyline, where Phantom Bullet arc with Death Gun is adapted to the gameverse. This was supposed to be the ultimate Sword Art Online experience where there was a very personal story and your OC would be right in the middle of it with his or her decisions affecting the world and the flow of the events, of course. It didn't really work out that way, did it? Remember that this ultimate review is for the base game alone and does not take the DLCs into account, the first of which has released today, 27th of April on all consoles, while a critical authentication issue seems to be preventing PC players from accessing it currently. If you're not familiar with my ultimate reviews, I start by reviewing the story aspect of the game, then go on to gameplay, which I consider to be the second of the two main pillars of a game, and follow this with supporting pillars like music, graphics, voice acting, etc. I do not provide scores or anything in my ultimate reviews. I aim to provide you the information that you need to decide for yourself if the game is for you or not, and I don't think scores actually help that happen. So, without further ado, let's start with the story of Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet, and a fair spoiler warning for those of you who do not want any spoilers. Not that there is much to spoil in this game from a story perspective anyways, aside from the final arc, but still, you may want to skip to the time mentioned on your screen right now to avoid the spoilery part. If you've been watching this video with the subtitles on, you've probably realized by now that I keep referring to the story of this game in quotes. There are a couple of major problems with this game and this is one of those issues. There is not really a story in sight in this game. The only major story thread kicks in about 80% into the game, where things start getting interesting, and even then there is no real payoff to the build-up itself. But I'm getting ahead of myself, let me start from the beginning. The game starts as you enter Gun Gale Online and meet your childhood friend Kureha. Together you join a tournament, you stumble upon an Alpha Sis unit who registers you as its master. Kirito goes on to attack you but immediately stops after realizing the fate of the Alpha Sis unit is already set by already being bound to you. That is as much of a story as you will have for the remainder of the game until the final act. After this semi-action scene, the game turns into a collectathon with significant exposition dumps. Like, seriously, after you meet Kirito, there's an hour-long exposition dump with you meeting all the characters of the game in a single go without a single gameplay section, and things don't get any better, even after the intro sequence itself is over. There is apparently a new update coming to Gun Gale Online introducing a brand new area called SPC Flügel, and Alpha Sis units are the key to getting there. But you need to collect certain parts for your Alpha Sis to meet the requirements of this new area. And surprise surprise, pretty much the rest of the game turns into complete this dungeon to grab part A, defeat this boss to collect part B, and on and on. I don't really consider play the game a story when I am already playing a game. I'm I'm just gonna go fast forward here about 3 areas, so I can start with the little part that has some sort of a story. After you meet the requirements and reach SBT Flügel, your childhood friend Kureha starts getting upset as you start surpassing her in Gangale Online, the only place where she felt capable herself, which creates a rift between you and her. Meanwhile, Itsuki starts going really creepy, making it very obvious that he is gonna become the villain and stuff. Meanwhile, Deathgun enters the picture, and this is where the story splits into 2, with Kirito mode coming into play. Kirito mode is essentially the entire Phantom Bullet arc copy-pasted into this game, although the character personalities and motivations are so much different in the SAO gameverse, which results in an extremely jarring experience. I mean, let's be real, one of the first sentences Shinon spouts in Kirito mode is that she is weak, but her friends give her the strength to stand tall, which she follows up by saying, "And that is why I joined Bullet of Bullets alone to defeat Deathgun." I mean, that hypocrisy pretty much sums up the entire Kirito mode. It just falls short on so many aspects and is quite nonsensical when it comes to the story. The cause of this is that in Kirito mode, the gameverse tries adapting into the main canon for some reason. If they would have just followed the same path as Fairy Dance in Hollow Fragment and Mother's Rosario and Lost Song, and adapted Phantom Bullet into Fatal Bullet, instead of the other way around, Kirito mode could have been an amazing and engaging story, but in the end it was none of that. Simultaneously in the gameverse timeline, in the main campaign, your OC receives a threat supposedly by Deathgun and is forced to wear a nerve gear that was sent to his home address and log into a remote server with the original death penalty for dying in place, same as Aincrad. As you log in, you encounter Kureha, Zeliska and Itsuki having received the same threats as well and also logged in the same way. Now, this is where the only decision in the game happens, and the decision kind of only exists for the bad endings of the game. Depending on your decision, either Kureha or Zeliska dies while trying to protect you, or if you unlock the true ending, you will defeat the boss without any issues and spoil Itsuki's plan in a single go without, anybody being in any sort of danger or dying. I have specific videos where I go much more in depth about the endings and their faults, and you can find them by clicking the icon in the upper right corner of your screen. But the gist of it is that there are 2 main points. First off, your decision doesn't matter for the canon true ending of the game. And the second one is, the ending itself isn't conclusive to begin with, which is a huge problem for a game to have, not being able to properly conclude the one story thread it has created. But yeah, that is pretty much on the story side of things. Overall, a very disappointing experience if you ask me, where the game does not manage to deliver on the promises it made in its marketing campaign, with 80% of the story being exposition and about 20% being meaningful story bits. But the problems will continue when we get to the supporting pillars and talk about the characters themselves. But before doing that, let me talk about the gameplay, of course. Fatal Bullet is by far the closest the SAO gameverse has come to being a proper game in terms of gameplay. So far, pretty much all the games have been visual novels with some gameplay attached to them. Fatal Bullet, however, is an actual game with a visual novel attached to it. While not on the same levels of a AAA game like The Division, the gunplay is pretty damn solid. The enemy variety is alright for its size as well. I had initial troubles with the game and its sticky aim, as it's called on consoles, while I refused to use the aim assist mechanic, which turned out to be a big mistake. You see, the aim assist this game has is not the same assist we know from other games. In Fatal Bullet, aim assist does not refer to the sticky aim itself. It is one of the mechanics in Fatal Bullet that makes the game less of a tactical shooter like The Division and more of a fast-paced arcade-styled game to keep the combat flow going. As I have gotten used to using the aim assist, my experience with the game became much more enjoyable, and while some people will still turn the feature off because, they want more of a hardcore experience, I really appreciated it for allowing me to have mindless fun with the game, thanks to the increased combat pace that it allowed me. That was indeed something an anime game like this could have used, and it was a magnificent addition for this game. The only problem with the weapons is, sadly, the photon swords. While all guns work perfectly fine, especially with the aim assist helping you shred moving targets at a much faster rate, same can't be said about this unique weapon type. Supposedly, photon swords are the most agile type of weapons. Well, they certainly don't feel that way in this game. Combined with the lack of a target lock mechanic, stiff sword skills that require you to be 99% on target to connect and not deal a lot of damage anyways to begin with, and the overall sluggish feel of this weapon type is, plainly said, a bad experience. I really tried liking the photon swords in this game, I truly did. I played the entire story with a photon sword in my hand, but I have never gotten any good feelings from using it, bar one or two exceptions. But overall, if you're not obsessed about using a photon sword, the gameplay is absolutely solid with tons of different gun types to suit your needs, and they all will let you play the way you want to. Sure, the AI will probably cause you a lot of issues since they are mostly stupid, but that has been a trend in pretty much every single game so far. At this point, you should have gotten used to being the solo hero. I should probably sneak in multiplayer into gameplay part as well. I played a little bit of multiplayer and I can say that the underlying netcode is not very good. I haven't seen such bad connection quality since the bad days of Destiny 1 PvP. Due to these connection issues, PvP battles do suffer a lot. On the other side of things, the PvE co-op quests that give you a common objective to work as a team are definitely not that bad. Considering it's mostly your friends that are lagging, that does not have a huge effect on the boss itself. Like, once the lag spikes are over, all of your contribution seems to be registering just fine, so you just focus on the boss and not die. But yeah, that's pretty much the gameplay part of things, and with that we are closing in to the end of this review. Let's talk quickly about the supporting pillars, starting with the music, and keep in mind that music is mostly a subjective matter. Overall, I find Fatal Bullet soundtrack to be quite strong in general in comparison to previous SAO games, probably on par with Hollow Realization, which has my favorite Sword Art Online game soundtrack so far. The action-packed tunes are very great, and the developers being DIMS, a company who developed many Sonic games in the past, they sure know how to use these fast-paced tracks. Sadly, I can't say the same thing for calmer tracks though. The non-action oriented tunes are pretty much all the time forgettable, and I have the feeling that DIMS realized that and actually opted for a mostly no music approach to many events that don't have action. But coupled with the seemingly tired voice acting, this actually has been a worse choice to make. I don't know what happened in this game, but every character sounds so stale. This is incredibly baffling because all of the previous SAO games had top-notch voice actor performance, especially the Artink games. Despite how much I do not like Lost Song and Axel World vs Sword Art Online, they both had an incredibly passionate performance by their respective VAs. In Fatal Bullet, however, the characters just sound bored most of the time. Maybe that is because the voice actors were given too much expositional lines, maybe it's because of the voice filter their voices go through in certain environments, but I don't know, they just don't give me the feeling that they are interested in the events in general. And this actually couples nicely with another aspect, namely the presentation of the game. I know some people don't like the fact that dialogues are not presented with the usual 2D sprites that we have gotten used to in previous games, but rather the in-game 3D models this time around. I personally don't have a problem with this, but I understand where you're coming from if you do. It's down to opinions after all. The problem is that the OC character is a mute character. I told this in my True Ending critique video last week. I am a strong advocate against silent custom protagonists because 99% of the time this is where it leads to. In a group talk, everybody completely ignores you or just outright speaks for you, and in one-on-one talks, the person talking to you is essentially doing a monologue. Both scenarios are definitely not fun to watch because the character that is supposed to be the main character becomes absolutely ineffectual, a huge deal breaker when it comes to immersion. To be honest, the game shines during the side events, mostly within the circle where the perspective character belongs, of course. For example, if you have a side event as OC, the events with Kureha, Zeliska, and especially Basalt Joe are extremely well done. Same goes for Kirito when you go through the events with main SAO characters. Most of the time the events are quite entertaining. But when the OC starts interacting with the main cast, there's a significant disconnect between the main cast and the OC, since the game does absolutely nothing to make us believe that anybody besides Kirito, Asuna and Shinon from the main cast are actually our friends. Meanwhile, the bed scenes all around, whether you're in the OC campaign or in Kirito mode, are extremely forced. You see, bed scenes in previous games were more intimate moments between characters than actual dates or sexual scenes. You can complain about the Game World's girls having their bed scenes with the OC instead of Kirito, but that is not the problem here. The problem is, all these bed scenes in Fatal Bullet act like they are actual dates. At the very least, every beginning scene of these bed scenes, which is completely an unnecessary addition to this and totally irrelevant, especially considering none of the characters actually acknowledge this during the bed scene itself. Now, there is one more major aspect, and that is the character count. There are way too many characters out there, all of which are irrelevant to the story, but are there in every single scene in the game. There is no reason to bloat the main campaign by adding all the characters to say one sentence per group talk. This is an outright terrible practice. But that is a topic I will actually talk about next week, relating to the entire SAO Gameverse rather than just being focused on Fatal Bullet, so make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified once I upload that video. Or if you're watching this review in the future, you can of course click on the icon on the upper right corner and watch that video instead once it's uploaded. And that brings me to the end of this video. Hope you found this review useful. If you did, make sure to hit like and share. If you have further questions, feel free to ask them in the comments and I'll make sure to answer them. If you enjoy my content, do support me on patreon.com/gamertorque and help me make more creative choices here. You can also find me on facebook.com/gamertorque and on Twitter @gamertorque95. I'll see you guys probably tomorrow if the Alternative Gun Gale Online anime wraps up Volume 1 tomorrow in a single episode. So, take care.